information, Brett has been a consultant with Momentum Consulting for over 10 years. Momentum Consulting is based in Austin, Texas, and specializes in accelerating human capital. Brett's specialty is actually finding performance solutions where others don't look, in behavioral blind spots. That sounds pretty intense. His tenacious curiosity demands a lot of his clients, and they in turn demand a lot from him. Today, Brett is going to walk us through and educate us in an 8-step process that takes the complexity out of business culture. Please join me in a round warm of applause for Brett Morris.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Michael. I'm like you. I had no idea that exercise was going to happen, so I was equally surprised. Maybe you knew maybe you knew we were going to start off the day that way. Okay, great. As Heather said, I'm from Austin, Texas. That's where Momentum is based. I'm the Florida branch, and I'm here to stay. I spent 6 years in Iowa, so I earned the right to be here. Nobody comes directly from Texas to Florida, I don't think, but try 6 years in Iowa. Florida looks pretty good. So we've been here about a year and a half, and we love it. In 100 years or so, we're going to die here, so that's no more moving. So this is really the first in a series. If Michael and Pat and I don't screw it up, this is the first in a series for Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance. So you're really checking out, this workshop is something new. So today, as Heather said, we're really talking about human capital. Culture is a word I'll be saying a lot as well. So I'm going to jump right in. Momentum partnered with a company called HPC about 2 years ago. Momentum, we have had our own curriculum for culture for decades. And what we've mostly focused on is one-to-one coaching or leadership team development. We take teams off-site and develop them and help them create a culture. What has been missing is a company-wide culture creation and how to get that in. So when we partnered up with David Friedman in High Performing Culture a couple years ago, we got that missing piece. So that is what I want to share with you today. So if you have something to take notes on, or if you have a great memory, use all of that. Also, we are going to be providing the PowerPoint slides for anybody who would like that. We can email that to you later. Okay, so a couple of terms I'd like to define right off the bat. I'll be talking about not just how to create a culture, but really a world-class, high-performing culture. So, world-class, kind of an overused term, right? We've heard that a lot. I like to describe it as superior results sustained over time. Okay? So, we're just going to go with that for today. That would be what I would call world-class or high-performing culture. Culture, that's a term that's really used a lot. It has a million different definitions. So especially as it relates to organizational or business culture, I would like to hear from just a couple people. What is your definition of organizational culture? Be brave.
The way people behave.
The way people behave. Very good. Ron.
Alignment within the organization.
Alignment within the organization. Let's have one more. They're all right so far. What's one more? Yeah.
How employees view their spot in the company.
How employees view their spot in the company. Okay, very good. So you can see, and again, those are all, I would say, correct, especially for your organization. But can you see how just the word culture has a bunch, it can be hard to define. It can be hard to align on one definition. There's just some cloudy and fuzziness around the word culture. So I really want to cue in on what you said as far as the way they behave, because I invite you to consider one word can be culture, and that is behavior. What do you want your people to do? And we're going to get to that. I'm going to take some deep dives into that later. So, can we agree that culture has a big impact on how people do their job? Yeah? Has anybody ever worked at an organization that had one of those crappy cultures? Yeah? Now, think about when you were working at that crappy company, which is not the one you're at now. When you were there, what was your experience like every day you came to work? How efficient were you? How much effort did you give? How productive were you in general? What did you really do? How much value were you to the company? Now, yeah?
I think from a HR perspective, when you observe the behavior that counterproductive, the first thing that HR would think that it's impossible to maintain. Means that at what point the organization will go down the hill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Very good point. So we're going to get to that exact point in a little bit. So for those of you who have or are currently working at an organization that has a great culture, think about what that's like. Think about how it feels to go to work every day. Think about the effort that you give. Think about how much value you are to that organization. Can you see a difference just in that? Okay. So, but still, culture is kind of this big cloudy thing. I want to really bring some simplicity to the whole thing today. And you're going to leave with three things. Number one, you're going to leave with the tools on how to define and create your culture, no matter where you're at with your current culture. Number two, how to implement that. And number three, how to sustain it, how to make it last. Okay? I know it's too good to be true, but it's really going to happen. So, if we can agree that culture has a big influence on how people do their jobs, you can see, results are really driven by behavior. And behavior really is driven by the culture. So, we looked at a study because we wanted to look at really, what kind of financial impact does culture have? So we looked at 200 companies, the 200 companies studied versus the results of 200 companies that had an intentionally created culture versus companies that did not. We call that just culture by default. And we looked at some of their results. Revenues were up 4 times as much, stock up 12 times as much, the profits were up astronomically higher. Then we looked at a strategic effort. Why did new hires choose the company they chose to work for? 63% chose that company because of the culture. And only 6% because of higher wages and 5% because of advancement opportunities. So I'm saying this because culture, especially, from an HR perspective, you understand this, but sometimes culture is viewed as kind of this fuzzy problem that we're going to drop in HR's lap. But it really is a strategic and financial issue. Can you see that? Okay. All right, I have more slides. I don't know what they are. Oh, all right. Slightly less, that would not work for Pat. Slightly less scientific study, but this is kind of based on a Gallup poll they did on engagement. So in any given company, there are what we're just going to call bad people. And not like bad people, but a bad cultural fit. Like no matter where you put them, no matter how much training you give them, they are what we call the actively disengaged. They might sabotage. They're not really that interested in succeeding. They're into gossip and just cultural behaviors that you're not interested in as a business person. And then there's this group, and this is everyone in this room, right? They're great no matter where you are. No matter where you are in the organization, you don't have to micromanage them. They're just awesome. So this is maybe 10 or 15% over here. This is 10 or 15% over here. But this big group is what we call the disengaged, or just the masses, the herd. This is our real target today that we're going for. Because this is the one that's going to conform to the crappy culture, or they're going to go with the awesome, high-performance, world-class culture. Okay? I have more slides. Think of your best people. So think of someone you work with, and they might even be in the room, that is really great. They're great at their job. They're great to be with. It might be your boss. It might be your coworker. It might be your friend. Any of those people. Think of who that is. And those, if you could build a business, you could clone that person and build a business, a whole organization around that person, right? So think of that name. You can say the name. But I want to hear, what do they do? What do you observe them doing that makes them so great? I'd like to hear from a couple people. Yeah. They?
Thinking about others. Like
They think about others. Okay, good. So they have like this team, they have team atmosphere around them. Did you have one?
yeah, they stay engaged.
They stay engaged. Great. So they're just on task, they don't divert or get distracted, and they're productive, I'm guessing? Who else? Yeah.
Their attitude is contagious.
Their attitude is contagious, and I'm guessing it's good attitude. Okay, good. Very good.
They smile.
They smile. I need work on that. Thank you. So yes, if you could have a whole company of these people that smiled and had a great attitude that was contagious and were engaged and thought about others, how would that be for a company? Just any organization. That would be really cool, right? Okay, you can have that. That's what we're going to do today. So, where does culture come from? In any group of friends that you have, bless you, in your church, in your company, in your department, in your office, I assert there is a culture. There's a big culture, there are smaller cultures. In each one of those, where would you say the culture comes from? A leader? Okay. Where else? From the group? Yeah? Yeah. Where else?
From somebody showing a vision.
Showing a vision? Okay. Did you?
From the learned behavior.
From the learned behavior? Okay. Well, I would say to a degree, those are all included in what I call the strongest personality. So, on Wednesday nights, I go play trivia at a drinking establishment from time to time. And I'm kind of unofficially in this group, and we've never won, but our leader is this brilliant lawyer, and he really believes that he's brilliant, you know, and he's really funny, he's kind of sarcastic and cynical, and we're always poking fun at each other. Oh, that's a dumb answer, but we'll go with it anyway, or, you know, so we have a lot of fun, and I notice, and we'll just call him Steve. So we all have a Steve in our lives. And the thing is, Steve is the strongest personality. And we all have fun, but the culture that Steve provides in our group isn't necessarily the culture we are or that we would bring. But he is the strong personality that kind of creates, and we all gravitate and become that. And then when I leave, go home, I'm not that Steve culture anymore. So by default, we have a Steve culture. Make sense? Can you kind of picture that? Right. And if you have a leader who is a great, powerful, charismatic, caring about others, profitable, everywhere at one time, all the time kind of person, then you're probably going to have a great culture in your organization. So we're saying that that person really can't be everywhere all at once, but the culture starts to come from that single person. Now, if it is a big organization and they are great, then you probably have a pretty good culture. But what we say is that it's too important not to be intentional. All of those that we describe with that charismatic or not charismatic leader is what we call this culture by default. It just kind of disseminates by accident. All right? So, if I were to ask you guys in here, on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being culture is really not that big of a deal, 5 being, oh no, culture is very important to the bottom line of a company, just raise your hands, 1 to 5. Where would you say culture lies in your opinion? I see some 5s, I see a 4, 5s, 5s, 4, 4s, okay. Well, so when we ask CEOs, what we got is about that. We got about 4.8. Most of them said 5, right? So then we ask the same CEOs, you know, do you have a strategic plan? Oh, yes, you know, we look out 10 years, 25 years, 50 years. We have exit strategy.